but then the bulk of the meeting we'll be getting your feedback, and Deb will go into exactly how we'll do that. So welcome, and please take it away, Deb.
Yeah, hi, good evening. So good to see you all. I think all of you who are on here now were on here last time, but I'm Deb Meihoff with Communitas. I'm part of the consultant team being led by Walker Macy, and you'll meet some of my colleagues with Walker Macy in a minute. I am the facilitator for the Community Advisory Committee for the Beaverton Downtown Loop, just to check to make sure you're in the right spot. So this evening, Dan just mentioned we have quite a bit of discussion time set aside. We'll do a little bit of a presentation of findings. You all received those materials ahead of time, so hopefully you're prepared for those. We will break out into breakout rooms. I think the way, Jean, maybe you and I can have a side chat when we get to the, when Ken and Tiffany are presenting, we can just sort of figure out how many people we have, but I think we'll probably have about 5 people per group, something like that. And we'll have a good conversation. There'll be facilitators in each of those, and I'll line you out in those when we get there. Just a reminder, I think most of you are familiar with Zoom, but just a reminder, if you're on a computer or a laptop, down at the bottom, there are a bunch of icons. The chat, you can send a note directly to Jean, who's the master of controls, if you're having some sort of technical problem, or you can comment in the for the whole group, but those get recorded and will be published along with the meeting notes. So just keep that in mind. And then under reactions, if you click on reactions, there's a raise hand feature. We don't have too many spots where we might need that this evening, but feel free to use it. And if you're having trouble hearing or something and you're just not able to get any attention, click that reaction, raise your hand, and it'll grab the attention of one of us. There's quite a few of us sort of scanning for that, including myself. So I'll try to make sure to get there. We are doing our best. Well, we will definitely end the meeting on time. We will do our best to stay to the times that are stated in the agenda. We may run a little ahead like we did last time, and if we do, we'll probably just give some extra time to discussion, but we will do our best to end promptly at 6:30. We have invited members of the public to sit in and observe and hear the presentations and some of the larger group discussions. When we get into small breakout rooms, we won't have that ability well, I don't know. I don't think we're going to have that ability, but we'll be taking notes and that'll get reported out. At the very end of the meeting, or toward the end of the meeting, you'll see on the agenda, we've reserved some time for members of the public. If you have comments you'd like to share with the CAC or with staff, we'll give you some time for that. We just ask you to be brief. Our CAC members are community volunteers as well, and we just try to respect their time on that. And if you have more comments and thoughts you'd like to share with the team, you can contact Dan directly or go to the website and see the contact information, and we'll get you hooked up and have a conversation with you more in depth. So thank you for being here. I think that is it for the rundown. Let me see. Oh, two other, sorry, really brief housekeeping items. We will do a follow-up survey for CAC members like we did last time. This one will be more substantive. It'll be similar to the questions we have in the discussion. So if you just don't have enough time in the discussion to get everything you want to say out, or if you have new ideas after the meeting or sort of new thoughts, that'll be the place to put those. And again, we're looking at all those. We're sort of incorporating that in our thinking on the project team side, and we'll make sure to summarize those in the meeting notes. And then speaking of meeting notes, you got some notes from the first CAC meeting. If you have any corrections or questions about those, contact Dan or Jean, and we'll sort that out. And then I think we will be publishing those probably in the next week or so. So any corrections, let us know, and we'll do that for the future as well. We want to make sure we're as accurate as possible and capture the important points of the discussion in the meetings. And I think those are all of my housekeeping items. Does anyone have any questions or needs before we move into the bulk of the discussion? Okay, great, thank you. So we do need to do a quick round of introductions. This is because it's being recorded. Some people may be watching this at a later date. It's helpful for people just to know who of the CAC was here today. We're keeping track on our end. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to call your first name. I'll go down the list. I'll call your first name. If you could give us your name, any affiliations you have that you're representing folks, and then we'll go on to the next one. Nothing too detailed. I think the only person, it looks like Melissa wasn't here last time and she's not here today either. So I think these will be real quick, but if you can just help me with a little rundown here. How about Oswaldo?
Thank you. Oswaldo Bernal, former Diversity Advisory Board, currently with the Urban Renewal Advisory Committee,
Great.
South
Thank
Beaverton.
you. Oh, sorry. Sorry, Oswaldo. How about Kira?
Kira Kador, real estate developer, Rembold Properties.
Thank you. And Jefferson.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jefferson Chow. I'm the pastor of Beaverton First United Methodist Church.
And Tom.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Tom Drain, Central Beaverton resident and current chair of the Central Beaverton Neighborhood Association Committee.
Great. Randy.
Hi, Randy Dunlap. I'm retired. I live in Downtown Beaverton, and that's about it.
Great. And Brett.
Brett Francis, Washington County Investments. I manage the Demeraux Ford property.
Thank you. Ruben.
Ruben Halpern. I live and work in Beaverton, and I'm an avid biker and walker.
Michael.
Michael Hashizume, member of the Bicycle Advisory Committee.
Okay. And I'll just double check. Travis is not here. Okay. And then Lindsay.
I am Lindsay Lampier, and I'm here with Lampier Enterprises.
Thank you. And I believe Paige is also missing. How about Brad?
Hello, Brad McLean. I live in Five Oaks and the vice chair of the Traffic Commission.
Mung Wee. Young Wee, I thought I saw her.
Yeah, sorry, my mouse was just like not, it was just not behaving. I'm Young-hee Murphy, and I am a business owner of a business, Global Art of Dance Studios in downtown Beaverton.
Thank you. And Kathleen?
Hi, I'm Kathleen. We live in some condos on Crescent Street near the Beaverton Central Max. And I am a member of the Library Advisory Committee, although my opinions are my own and all that fun stuff.
Yeah.
And I really appreciated the little synopsis of last meeting. It's nice to remember everybody.
Indeed. Thank you so much. And how about Rachel?
Hey, I'm Rachel Phillip. I live in Central Beaverton, and I'm a member of the Central Beaverton NAC, as well as the Visioning Advisory Committee.
Great. And Ginger?
Hey, everyone. I have been the Farmers Market Manager for 26 wonderful years.
Thank you. Ben, I believe, is not here. Brandon?
Brandon with Exnevo.
And Scott? Scott here? Not here. Stephen?
Hi, everybody. I'm Steve Smelly. I'm long-term resident in South Beaverton and with Goldfish Consulting. I've been going to Ginger's Farmers Market since probably inception. And I represent the Beaverton Chamber of Commerce Board as well.
Great, thank you. And is Paul here? Paul Thornton?
Yes, Paul's here.
All right.
My name is Paul Thornton. I've been a Beaverton resident since the mid-70s. I own a small business, Thornton Family Coffee in Beaverton Central. I spent some time on the Economic Vitality Committee, and I'm currently on the Friends of Beaverton Committee too.
Great, thank you so much, Paul. And I believe Sarah is unable to make it. Thank you all. And why don't we do just a quick introduction of city staff and the consultant team that are here as well. And maybe Jean, do you mind kicking that off?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Jean Senechal Biggs. I am the city's transportation planning manager. I work in the community development department. Dan's part of my team. It's great to have you all here.
Great. And how about Francisca?
Hello, everyone. It's nice to see so many familiar faces. My name is Francisca Rose. I'm the Public Involvement Coordinator with the City of Beaverton, and I'm supporting the public engagement efforts for this project.
Thank you. And then I don't think there's any other city staff on here other than Dan, who you met at the top. And then from the Walker Macy team, Mike.
Hi, everybody. I'm Mike Zilas. I'm a landscape architect with Walker Macy, and I'm part of the design team. And I've had the privilege of working in your city for many, many years, including on the library and that wonderful parking lot that your farmers market's in. So I'm happy to be here.
And Ken?
Hi, I'm Ken with Walker Macy. I'm the project manager with the consultant team. And while it looks like I'm in City Park, I wish I was in such a beautiful community. I'm there in spirit.
And how about Tiffany?
Hi, everyone. Tiffany Swift with Walker Macy. I'm a landscape and urban designer working closely with all the city and the consultant team on this project. Good to see you all again.
Very good. Thank you. And then I see one of our CAC members is here, Melissa Bell. Welcome. Thank you for being here. Would you mind just, I think we were unable to meet you the first time. So if you wouldn't mind just giving us a little bit of what drew you to the committee and any other relationships you have to downtown.
Sorry, I'm turning up my volume. I live in downtown Beaverton. I live on 3rd Street, which is on the other side of high school. And so I've owned our house for 12 years. So I have 2 kids, so we walk a lot. We visit a lot of local places. I know a lot of the downtown Beaverton business owners. And then I used to own the kiosk that is in front of the library, the octagonal building. And I had that for 2 years before I had my daughter 4 years ago. And I sold food. So I'm just a part of the community.
That's wonderful. Thank you. And you've had some interesting perspectives to bring. So appreciate you being here. Thank you all so much for that. Jean, I believe I'm handing it over to you and Dan to talk about some of the CAC members' photos they sent.
Okay, great. Give me just a sec. I get my screen ready to share. Hold on, let's see if I can do this.
The way it was the highlight of our week when we went through. I think it was on Friday, right, Jean? When we spent some time looking at the pictures, it really was very interesting. So, thank you, everybody.
Yeah. Okay, you're seeing my screen, and I'm going to share my screen full screen. Will it let me? There we go. Okay, you're seeing my slides. So if you remember last time we gave you an assignment, and thank you for those of you who took the time to do it. We heard from most of you. I want to say we heard from about, I don't know, 16 or 17 of you spent some time in the last couple of weeks to go walk around downtown, spend some time on a loop, take a look at it, see it maybe in a little bit different light now that we're talking about this project. And so Dan, as Dan said, we went through your photos late last week. It was a fun thing for us to do. just to see what you all saw. You know, I think for those of us on the project team, we have very, you know, trained eyes, and we look at, we're looking for particular things. So it's helpful to see this project area from your perspectives, and hear what is important to all of you, ideas on things that you think need to be changed, things that you really enjoy about the loop. So that was the assignment, to send us 3 photos each, things that you believe are assets and things that you would change.
By the way, thank you for the extra effort as well that you guys made. In terms of making sure that the pictures got to us somehow. You know, it was not easy. People took different paths, but they got to where they needed to go. So thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, I see Paul wrote a little note in the chat too. You had more than enough. That was partly to make it a little bit easier. It was hard for us even going through all those photos. So I'm going to go through, I don't have all of the photos here to share with you tonight, but Dan and I, as we went through them, we saw some categories of things, and that's what I'm going to walk through with you. I think after this evening, we're going to compile them completely and put them all together and just share that document back with all of you. It's something that we're going to look at as a team, and think about the work that we've already done and how to weave in some of the things that you've seen as we're moving forward, but also just want to have it as a document for all of you to have to reflect on and see what everybody else saw. So I'm going to start with something that there was just complete agreement from pretty much, I don't want to say everybody, but many of you commented on the trees, the tree canopy, green spaces along the loop, how much it's an asset to the loop. And I just thought this was a lovely picture with that shadow and the branching. I think this is a Rachel photo. Nice job, Rachel. You caught the trees in a really interesting light with that shadow. See, will this go? No, here, let me click. There we go. Some more pictures of trees. You know, I think City Park is a big asset that we have at that one end of the loop, and several of you commented on City Park. Ginger went back in time. No, it is not fall, but Ginger went back into her archive of photos and couldn't help but send us a few lovely fall color. But this one, here's a farmer's market. You can see the tents, right? The canopies for the farmer's market, and just those really beautiful trees alongside on Hall Boulevard there, just how much of a color they bring to Hall Boulevard in the fall. So she gets maybe an extra point for going back in time. So that was something with sort of just near agreement on as an asset. But when it came to intersections and street crossings, I think there was also a lot of agreement around things that need change. So I've got the intersections, several of you took photos, I grabbed just a couple. Watson at Canyon Road and Hall at Canyon Road. You know, people commented on how it's noisy, uncomfortable. I can't remember who, somebody took a picture saying there's a desire to have a marked crosswalk here in that slip lane at Hall Boulevard where cars are turning right from Hall to go onto Canyon. So definitely some changes needed there. And similar sentiments were also said about the intersections at Farmington, and noisy and unpleasant, dangerous, someone called it dangerous. Someone commented on the long wait for pedestrians at the walk signal. Someone said they've seen multiple cars run the red light. A lot of desire for change here. Someone else commented on that, the railroad crossings here, because remember at Farmington, you're also parallel to the railroad, and a desire for some more pedestrian oriented signals and warnings at those crossings. Right. But then we also heard some interesting comments. Also, even this is back at, I want to say Hall and Farmington on the left. You know, Kathleen actually wrote from her perspective how this is a corner she likes. The ramps are wide. She also even commented on the vegetation, just having that that crossing. I think is a more comfortable crossing for her. We also had someone point out these ramps that have grates at the bottom of them that are harder to navigate. So some good things and some things that need change. And then we also heard from a couple people who talked about these crosswalks, and there's sort of the brick look in the intersection, and the crosswalks themselves are scored concrete. Some people said they love them and let's highlight and update them. Someone also commented that the pavement kind of blends in a lot, and that's something that should change. So some fine tuning, I think, to do there as we talk about the look and feel of these intersections. So now kind of moving on to the pedestrian space and the sidewalk areas, we got a lot of pictures for people that show these narrow sidewalks, cluttered sidewalks. There's a lot of stuff in this one on the right going on here. The tree well with the rock pavers that are wobbly, the sand is drifting into the sidewalk, it's been patched. This, I believe, is the lighting, the electrical cabinet for the lighting. This is over on Watson between Canyon and Broadway. There's some planters and benches and that really have narrowed up the sidewalk. It's great to have that planting and create some interest here, but we've also narrowed up the space quite a bit. So narrow cluttered sidewalks, a lot of you commented on that.
That picture, Gene, I have to say, and the sidewalks was just a genius picture. It's incredible how many different types of surfaces and ages were on that sidewalk. So that was a very helpful one.
On this, yeah, this one. And then people also talked about broken or missing sidewalks as another area of change. So you can see here, there's been some repairs made on this sidewalk. There's just no sidewalk here, and there's even just become kind of a place for garbage to accumulate. This is on Watson between Milliken and Canyon. This is the Canyon end of the block. This is the Milliken end of the block. There's just no sidewalk here, and the building is right up against the curb. So sidewalks for sure. But then here's a sidewalk that actually has a little bit wider feel and has some space for, I think it was Kathleen who took this photo and commented on how there's sort of like two lanes created in this space with the tree dividing them. So there's some places where the sidewalks are a little bit more pleasant. Cycling, space for cyclists. So there are some bike lanes in places on the loop, but then there's some other places where it's a sign the bike lane ends, and cyclists are there, are just sort of, dropped into the travel lane with motorists. So I think just fair to say that bike lanes are inconsistent throughout the loop, and that's something we'll want to give some more attention to. And then this was an interesting one, parking. So we heard both in ways where it's an asset and in ways where it needs to change. So on the asset side, we heard from a couple of folks who like the parking because it provides some separation and a sense of safety for people on the sidewalk. But we also heard from the cyclist perspective that, in this space, really the cyclists are at risk of what we call getting doored, where someone opens the door into the bike lane right at that moment where a cyclist is passing through, and, cyclists can get pretty seriously injured when that happens. So this as a conflict, a space of sort of conflict for people biking and people exiting cars. So another thing for us to take a closer look at. And then moving on to just sort of the look and feel of the street and the how adjacent buildings contribute to street life or not. I don't have any pictures, but I think someone had commented on some of the buildings that face the street and the sidewalk and where people are encouraged to be in that space. Some people commented on that. Here's an area where someone commented on really needing a change in this stretch of Watson, really kind of north of Farmington. There really saw kind of no areas of interest as a pedestrian as you walk there. It felt like a place to just get through, not a place to be. And then a couple of you commented on closed buildings that really detract from street life, and seeing buildings that are, again, away from the sidewalk, setback, parking lots that really just produce a lot of heat in the summer. So again, our project is really looking at the right of way, but I think we're all aware of how much that interface between people in the sidewalk areas in the street and where the buildings are. So I just have to share, 3 of you sent us pictures of dumpsters. Oh, dumpsters. Garbage is part of our life. So not sure how we can address this, but I at least wanted you all to see that. I'm going to go quick through these next few things so we can get to hearing some comments from you and other thoughts and reflections. Many of you commented on the outdoor dining that's been happening as a big asset. I think we've all enjoyed seeing what we've been able to create in Beaverton during these times. Other civic places on the loop that people talked about, the Max. I know several of you have used the Max to commute to work, and the proximity of the loop to the Max is really important to you. The library, of course, is a big community destination. The farmers market people talked about, even just that nice Main Street character of Old Broadway. That came up as a nice place to get to on the loop. And then, of course, the Patricia Research Center for the Arts that's going to open about a year from now. That'll be an attraction as well. Okay, guys, we have 4 pictures of wayfinding signs just to share with you. And I think there was even a 5th vote that did not come with a photo, but many of you like the signage. So something for us to think about more. Business signage, people like that new sign at Big Chicken, the neon, I think speaks to people. So, and then a couple other things on site furnishings. A bus stop with a shelter, definitely seen as an asset. Remember this sidewalk that's narrow and cluttered? Well, there's also an asset here in that it's a place for people to sit and have some respite. Some things needing change. I guess this water fountain is broken. Yeah, that should get fixed. And then here's one full staple rack, but really the change is that more bike parking is needed. That's other feedback that we heard. It would be nice to see more bike racks on the sidewalk, or even creating space out in the street to take over a car parking space and have a cluster of bike racks for people to use. And then I'll just close on this one. There's sort of an element of civic pride and civic life that came up. Okay, Ginger and her going back in time photos said, I'm just going to share that ballot box. I think there's an element of sort of civic pride that came through. And then for those of you that don't know, there is a time capsule underneath the sidewalk from when improvements were made several years back, 1979. We have to wait a while before we get to open this time capsule. I'm not sure who will be here then, but we have that as an asset on the street. So just to summarize real quick, some of the assets that we've talked about, green spaces, the wider sidewalks at that library where the buildings are set back, gathering spaces for outdoor activities, that wayfinding signage, there's something there that we should tap into, and just connections to civic spaces and places. Again, some of these things we talked about that need improvement, both at intersections, the sidewalks, some of those blocks where there's just not enough stuff there for pedestrian interest, and as I mentioned, the bike lanes. So, whoops, there we go. I'm going to stop there. Hopefully I got through that quick enough so we have a little bit of time to chat some more. And yeah, any feedback or thoughts?
I just wanted to say I appreciated the opportunity to look around my neighborhood for the things I appreciated. I sort of don't do that on a daily basis, and it was nice to look, sort of have that as an assignment to go around and be grateful for neat things I like around me.
That's great. Thank you. Really quick, sorry, I saw in the chat that maybe Lindsay, I think you're good to go. Is that true? Sorting out your sound. Okay. Ramesh, I'm sorry, we're holding comments from our guests to the end. If you want to send a chat to Jean, she could probably process it that way. But thank you. We're trying to reserve time for CAC members here. Okay, I'm gonna slide us in, we're just a couple minutes behind. I'm gonna slide us into the overview presentation from Ken and Tiffany, and you'll see some common themes from the sort of technical analysis that they've done as well, and then we can dig into these issues a little bit more in the discussions.
Great. Thanks, Deb. So Tiffany, do you want to bring up the slides that we shared with the group? Great. So let's go to the schedule. So just as a recap for everybody of where we are in the schedule, we met with you recently at the end of March, just to kick things off. In the time we've been working on the project since November, really, we've been doing a lot of listening and a lot of learning and exploring. Just trying to get a handle on the existing conditions around on the loop and around. And certainly what we're hearing from you through your photos today is a key part of understanding what's important for us to look at in subsequent design alternatives and ideas. The next phase, when we next talk to you in May, we'd like to go into a little more detail on fleshing out the vision and the goals and objectives for the loop, and maybe share some initial thinking about ideas. But then the next phase, task D, which we're just starting to think about now, we'd like to share some ideas with you in July and then refined ideas in September. So that's just a quick recap of where we are in the schedule. If you could go to the next slide. So today we have a quick summary presentation of the information we sent to you last week. We're not going to go exhaustively through that show, but we just wanted to hit some highlights to sort of prime you with some thoughts that were important to us and lead us into that small group discussion so that you can have a more in-depth discussion about some of the things that really interested or concerned you about the loop that we should know about. So the structure of the show, you've seen these slides before, so I won't go into too much detail, but I'm going to start off and Tiffany's going to take up with the second part of this. If you could, if you have questions, we're setting aside 5 minutes after this presentation for sort of clarification questions before we jump into that small group. So to start, we wanted to talk about some initial goals that have been developed. And again, we really want to work with you to refine these goals and maybe flesh them out, talk about the details. But just for tonight, we just wanted to start with this preliminary list of draft goals. And so you can start thinking about those and help us refine. So starting at the top, the one key goal for the loop is to reimagine the use of public spaces and places. And if you think about the loop, the right of way or the street itself between buildings, that's public space. So that's available for us to envision a really exciting future public space from north to south. It's been expressed that this should be a priority for pedestrians, but also for cyclists and for transit users. At the same time, we want to emphasize safety for all users of the loop, the three above, as well as vehicles. We know that there is a really strong existing business community and a lot of people that live near the loop, but that's growing. There's new businesses, new restaurants, new apartments and condos that are being built. So we want to support both of those things and understand the impacts and possibilities around that. We think it's really important to establish a cohesive identity for the loop. And that identity should celebrate what's there now and strengthen that and celebrate some of the differences between the district. We're not necessarily looking to impose one character for the entire loop, but celebrate some of the differences. We are seeing that there's this increasing trend for people to use places in downtown Beaverton throughout the day. You've got the night market, you've got increasing numbers of restaurants and bars. So let's encourage fun. What are places that people can get together and see each other throughout the day and throughout the week and throughout the year? And then maybe most importantly, at the end, this should be a very inclusive decision-making process. We're going to be talking to a lot of people. You're a key part of our outreach. And we want to build community champions for the loop that last long after we've expressed our ideas, because it's going to take a while to realize this vision. And we want to make sure that that vision is something that you see your ideas reflected. So just to start going through some of the ideas. So this is existing conditions. So what's out there on the loop right now. But we thought that we didn't want to just express or explain those static existing conditions, we wanted to talk about what does that mean? Well, what are the opportunities? What are the challenges that come out of all of those existing conditions? So this is a summary of that thinking. So starting with context, as we explained at the last meeting, the loop is connecting two key activity areas in the city. You've got the Round and the PRCA that'll be open soon, and City Hall and the Mac Station, and this great civic node of the Farmers Market, City Park, and the Library. So that it's a connector, but it's also what happens in between. That's about a 15-minute walk, by the way, between those anchors. And when we looked at the history of the loop, maybe some key things to point out is that even from the very beginnings of Beaverton, it's always been a crossroads. There's been a railroad there for a long time. There have been sort of farm to market crossroads crossing at the heart of Beaverton. And then over time, the loop that wasn't there before has emerged, and it's become this street system. But with that crossroads of railroad and canyon and Farmington, those have become kind of barriers to connecting this north-south movement. So that's one of the key challenges that history shows us for the loop. The downtown design plan that was recently completed in the city included a step that adjusted the zoning for downtown. And just a key takeaway from that, if you see the loop that is dashed on this map, the north part of the loop, north of Farmington, has the ability to become a much higher density mixed use district centered around the Mac stations. And future buildings could go up to 12 stories there. South of Farmington, recognizing the historic character of Old Town, that's going to be lower. That's more like 6 stories, but it's still intended to provide a mix of housing and jobs and services, maybe strengthening what's there now and infilling with more activity. We have been noticing that there's a lot of exciting things happening in downtown. I keep mentioning the restaurants, but it is really amazing what's happening. And as some of you have been involved with, some of the new developments around the Rise, the PRCA, the new Verso apartments, and the Marianne that's under construction. So we think just the key part about that is that it's bringing activity and dynamism to the loop, and it's going to bring people that are walking, and they're going to want to use the loop to get between these major destinations that we described. So you'll see as we go through the presentation and what we shared with you, we have a table that summarizes the opportunities and constraints. We're not going to walk through all of those, but we'll just pick out some highlights. So the highlight for us in terms of existing active users is the things I mentioned, those 2 anchors, north and south. And the key opportunity, again, is all the new activity that's coming with new housing and new businesses, and the potential from new code adjustments that will encourage even more. Constraint being the barrier that I mentioned, the barriers. So then looking at the identity of the loop, we noticed that right now there's kind of 3 character areas. There's a really strong identity south of Farmington and Old Town. There's kind of this middle zone between Canyon and Farmington, and then this sort of feel of very auto-oriented development north of Canyon. So just understanding that existing character, if you go to the next slide, helps us understand some of the opportunities to maybe help resolve the lack of a clear identity. Clearly, one key opportunity and understanding that we have to keep in mind is that downtown Beaverton should feel welcome to people of different identities, race or abilities or sexual orientation. And there'll be clear coordination with the downtown equity strategy. But one idea might be to create gateways or markers at key intersections and really mark the north and south ends of the loop. Next slide. We've looked at stormwater, and we're working closely with city staff on this. Maybe a key thing to point out about this is that the loop, all of this, the rainwater that falls on the streets is flowing north to Beaverton Creek, and that's prone to flooding. And that's actually a sensitive habitat, and there's goals to restore that. So we have to be mindful of where all that stormwater is going and how it's treated before it goes into the creek. There is a number of open space types, and we know that was one of the assets that people mentioned in your photos. Thank you. That great aspects of downtown Beaverton, the Round, City Park, Maybe an underappreciated asset is Beaverton Creek. But there's also some types of open space that maybe don't spring to mind as parks, but they act that way as public gathering spaces, like the First Street Dining Commons, which may well become something more permanent. And then there's these sort of areas like at the corner of Hall and Farmington that are waiting areas, little pockets or oases of open space in the city. So mapping that, you see those two, the open spaces to the north and to the south, but especially north of Farmington, the local parks agency, THPRD, has identified that that's deficient. That really needs some new open spaces. So we'd like to consider that as we come up with concepts for the loop. Could that be coordinated with a future park or open space there? Another asset that people mentioned was the trees, and we think that's a great part of the loop's existing character. There's some great trees, either by themselves or as part of the regular street tree canopy, especially in front of the library. So we'll be looking at filling in some of those gaps, but we're interested in your thoughts on the street trees. And then some of the issues there are that, as you showed in your photos, trees are not in healthy places right now. They're very constrained, and you see that with the way that the roots are buckling the sidewalk. So we'll be looking closely at how can we improve that and ensure trees are healthier and they grow with a more mature canopy over time. So I think I'll pass it over to Tiffany to talk about transportation elements.
Thanks, Ken. So we'll start with the right-of-way. So the key takeaway is the right-of-way is where this loop project is going to be focused. It's the area that houses all these transportation aspects like the sidewalks, the lanes, the bike lanes, the curbs, street trees, and utilities. And also things like the furnishings that you all pointed out that can be kind of in the way when you're getting around. And the key takeaway for this slide is the right-of-way along the loop varies quite a bit. So up at the north, it's quite wide, 65 feet. This is this picture here. But there are some narrow points, like this point here on Hall between Canyon and Broadway is only 53 feet. And if you think back to all of those goals we have for the loop, you can see that we're going to have some challenges as we work through the designs of fitting in all the things that are important to us in a consistent way across the loop. And that's what we'll be getting to as we get into the design of this project. So sidewalks, you all did a great job of cataloging some of the great things and challenging things about the sidewalks in the loop. Suffice to say, the loop is identified in previous plans as being an important area for pedestrians, but right now it really varies. From the gaps to the really wide parts. So we're hoping to really address some of that in this project. Again, the Loop Street Furnishings, you guys took great pictures, better pictures of many of these places, so thank you. So I won't go spend too much time on here, but we have a lot of different types of street furnishings, of lighting, of furniture, of planters. Some of them are working well, some of them are maybe just not in the right spot right now, so they cause some other issues for people trying to move along the loop. And the pedestrian through zone is a concept that planners and designers use when we're thinking about the sidewalk. So the through zone is the important area in the middle of the sidewalk for people to walk and roll, and it needs to be unobstructed and level and accessible for everyone. All the other things that happen in the sidewalk related to buildings can happen in the frontage zone. Other things like other furnishing and utilities ideally are in the furniture zone. But like those pictures you all took at the loop, we have a little bit of mixing across the zone. So the following three maps kind of show where the pedestrian through zone is wider in the loop and where we have issues with obstructions. So in the north, it's the newer section of the loop. We have some really wide segments, over 18 feet over here on Watson near Milliken. But as you move to the south, there are some areas that really get narrowed up because of the placement of planters, seating, and utility poles. A lot of us have taken pictures of this segment. But there are also some wider areas. And when you get into Old Town, you have that regular pattern of the street trees planted in a way that it creates these little narrow parts that people have to weave around. But then near the south at the city park, you have these really wide, generous sidewalks that are really pleasant for people to walk and move through. So looking at the opportunities and constraints with sidewalk width, the consideration, it's just too narrow in some parts of the loop. So the main opportunity here is to shift how the existing right-of-way is allocated between the sidewalks, between the lanes for cars, for the bikes, and the parking. And the constraint here is we have existing trees, and shifting the allocation of any of these things requires some trade-offs, whether it's parking or lane width or sidewalk width. So that's something that we'll be working through with all of you and the project team. So moving to the bicycle system, like you all noted, it is incomplete in the loop. There are some sections in Old Town where it's a pretty consistent bike lane, but it is right next to the parked cars, so it's not the most safe situation. Then there are these major gaps in the north section, which is really unfortunate because it's close to the really key assets of the MAX and the Crescent Connection Trail. So the opportunities and constraints with the bike network is to fill those gaps in the bike network and to really create a more pleasant and comfortable experience for people biking in the loop area. And similar to the sidewalks, the opportunity is to reallocate the existing right-of-way. There could be potential to acquire some right-of-way in those very narrow points if it's needed and supported as we go through this process. But again, the similar constraints are the current right-of-way is used with all types of modes, and we're just needing to work through how to balance how that space is used and how changes will impact other modes like people driving, as well as biking and walking. So getting to transit, the loop is located close to two very busy MAX stations at the Round and over at the Beaverton Transit Center. Also has quite good bus service throughout most of the loop and some planned improvements along the 57 line to bus rapid transit line. So the transit service that the loop already has is a key part of why the improvements to bike and pedestrian facilities are also important, because that really completes the network and it really extends the reach of transit so more people can get to more places through a variety of modes. So looking at on-street parking, the key takeaway here, just to highlight, is much of the loop parking is not really regulated at this point. Most of it is green, is no time limit or over 2 hours. And the downtown parking strategy is in progress right now, so there will be more information to come on what parking changes are really needed in downtown Beaverton to respond to all of the growth that's happening and to make sure it all works together nicely. So the vehicular system, as we all know, the loop is a couplet, one way down Watson, one way down Hall, with multiple travel lanes, generally a little bit wider at the north, and a lot of closely spaced and challenging intersections at the middle, this box of Canyon and Farmington. And particularly this intersection that many of you noted is challenging, Broadway, Farmington, and the railroad, due to both the angle of how it comes together and how closely spaced it is. So look, this is a very text-heavy slide. So I think the key takeaway here is we've heard loud and clear from people we've talked to so far and the technical team that these intersections have safety challenges for everyone. If you're walking, if you're biking, if you're driving, it's tough. So the opportunity here is to really look at all the tools we have from the transportation and urban design side to make this a safer, more pleasant experience for everyone. And there's a wide array of tools that we've listed in here to make it pedestrians more visible, to make it easier for them to cross, to give them more time. But then also things like on the urban design side of creating more comfortable places for people to wait and make it not feel like such a long distance and not feel like it's so noisy. There are many constraints on the intersection and pedestrian safety issue. Part of it is the control of some of the major streets. So Canyon and the railroad are under ODOT control, but Farmington is under the city's control. So there's a little bit more leeway there. And I think, yes, that is it for our lightning fast presentation. So questions to clarify with the whole group?
We're running just a few minutes behind, but we have a couple of minutes for any clarifying questions before we get into breakout room for further discussion. Anyone, if you could use the reaction button to raise your hand, or if you just can't figure that out, Paul, thank you.
Hi, thank you. I have a clarifying question on like the zone ranges.
Okay.
An example would be the Patricia Research Center is outside of the loop proper. Is that correct? As would be like Binary Brewery is outside of the loop proper, but those are also really important locations that are within view or within sight of the loop. As we break out into groups and so on and move forward, how should this advisory group contribute to our thoughts on those outer ranges like that?
Yeah, great question, Paul. Ken or Tiffany or Dan, I'm going to look to you to respond to that.
I can start, maybe Dan can finish up, but we think that they're essential. That to understanding the potential for the loop, we have to look at these activity areas that are nearby that will drive pedestrian traffic to the loop. So we're not seeing the loop as a narrow 60-foot corridor that doesn't anticipate what's happening around it. So we think it's very important.
I would just add that at the same time, I mean, it's, you know, the beauty of something like this is, you know, if you're improving the connectivity along these streets, it isn't just helping connect people that are right on the street, but like you said, Paul, people that are a block off or 2 blocks off, or people even that are further south in downtown, further south in Beaverton to come through to the max. So it has benefits definitely outside of the immediate streets. However, we do need to keep in mind that for the purposes of the plan that we're coming up with, really the focus of that is the right of way of these streets and what we can do as a public entity with infrastructure and zoning to a certain extent. Jean, I don't know if you wanted to add anything.
No, I think that's good. Yeah, that worked for you, Paul? Yeah, okay, great.
Great. Randy, you have your hand up.
Yes, I'm wondering if the first part of this process is a bit like brainstorming, and is there any consideration of cost? And also, I believe Ken mentioned that barriers he was considering are mostly physical, and there could be some other barriers like policy and cost.
Sure. Yep. I think Dan or Ken.
Yeah, Randy, that's very good question. It is brainstorming. You know, we're trying to get some ideas about what's out there first, and you know what can be taken advantage of, what would need to be overcome, and you know, thinking that through. The goal of this is to try to help come up with some ideas as to potential design alternatives. To your question about constraints at this point with respect to cost, you know, obviously we're not talking about being able to build like a Golden Gate Bridge in this area or something like that, but you know, we do want, you know, we do want to have a free exchange of ideas, and if there's something that you're thinking about, you know, I think that's something. Now is the time to really discuss that. And ultimately, when we talk about identifying alternatives and especially evaluating them, cost will be something, as will be a criteria of evaluation that will be mentioned. It's part of the reality, and also certain policies as well.
Okay, thank you.
I was going to add on real quick, Randy, the policies are really going to be interesting as we think about the street, because it's the use of the right of way is just almost as important as the physical aspects. And so what's possible, what can a property owner do along the right of way? What time of day do things occur? That's all part of our thinking.
Thanks, Mike. Ruben, you have your hand up, clarifying question?
Yeah. You, at one point you talked about like the driving lanes and how the cars went. Is that like, are the number of lanes or the direction of traffic or changes like that, is that part of the scope of this? Is that under consideration, or is that a constraint that those lanes are how they are and the direction of traffic and all that kind of stuff?
Ruben, another very spot on question, and I'll let others chime in. For me, the answer is it's somewhere in the middle. I think in terms of the number of lanes, there is a hard constraint there in terms of the potential effects on vehicular traffic at the wider network level. There is some flexibility in terms of the width of the lanes and potentially some of the lanes that are used for turning movements, for example, that might limit some pinch points. The direction of traffic likely to be a constraint. I mean, unless there's a really good idea for something. Gene, I don't know if you'd like to add, or Mike, we've had discussions about this, Ruben, earlier on. When, we have people on the transport side that have kind of looked at this to kind of give us some guardrails in terms of what would impact things at a wider level that we wouldn't necessarily be able to deal with well with this project.
Yeah, just to add on to that for a minute, Ruben, we did an exercise with the city about the realm of the possible, because if you looked at everything that could happen here, there's thousands of permutations. The basic agreement right now is that it will remain a couplet, so northbound, southbound. We're going to look to see what we can do to calm traffic. The volume of traffic will likely post-COVID increase and be close to what it was before. We don't know, but it likely could. And to Dan's point, we're making the assumption that there'll be 2 lanes of travel in each direction. And then the variables are going to be, as Dan mentioned, turn lanes. There's some surplus areas that we may be able to take back towards other uses. But it's basically gonna be a couplet with 2-way traffic. 1 way in each direction.
All right, thank you. And then I'm going to take one more question, then I'm going to have us go into breakout rooms, and facilitators will be in each of those who can also answer some of the clarifying questions too. But Young Hui.
Thank you, Deb. This is sort of just piggybacking on Mike's response or answer, and that was, I'm just wondering how much consideration should we be giving to the fact that Beaverton is growing, and to like the future, not just usage, but traffic of, because it seems like a lot of times when we're traveling down 26, we're thinking, oh, why didn't the traffic engineers plan for the growth of all these cars traveling from the suburbs into Portland? So I'm just wondering, is that something that should be considered, or is it already being considered as we're looking at this loop?
That's a very good question. And again, this was something that we discussed as a project team earlier on, speaking about the realm of the possible. This is, there are streets in this area that serve a regional function, and will continue to do so. And I'm not just talking about Canyon and Farmington. Watson and Hall themselves are a major north-south connector, not just for Beaverton, but more regionally. And traffic will continue to grow, and that will be something that will need to be need to be taken into account. At the same time, you know, one of the important things to consider with respect to this project is that Beaverton has prioritized having a vibrant downtown. And I think one of the things that we're looking at here is having a transition between an area that has been really serving, has been really focused on regional traffic and traffic maybe that's passing through, to an area that has a special designation. A downtown has a special designation. You know, the priority in the downtown is more towards non-motorized traffic. That doesn't mean that, you know, you're building a wall where no cars can go through, but it means that becomes a more important consideration when you're looking at trade-offs when there are limited capacity, for example. So to briefly answer your question, it is something that, you know, we should continue to consider, but within the context of the fact that this is a project that whose goal is to contribute to a vibrant downtown that is looking to be vibrant by prioritizing non-motorized traffic. Jean, I don't know if you'd like to add anything.
No, I think you did good there. I think Deb wants to get us into breakout groups. Myung-Lee, did that answer your question okay for you?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you all. I'm excited to hear the discussions, really thoughtful questions. Just let me give you a quick overview of what's about to happen, and then we'll get to it. So we are going to break you up into 4 different groups. There'll be a couple groups that have 4 people and a couple that have 5, so they'll be nice and small. Each one will have a facilitator that's also taking notes, and those notes will be summarized in the meeting notes, so you'll be able to see the full detail. When we get out of the breakout rooms, we'll have a real quick sort of report out. The facilitator will talk with you about the sort of key highlights to report out. But don't worry, all that detail you discuss is also getting captured, and we'll make sure to share all that. And this discussion is really to help us make sure we didn't miss something in the existing conditions, help us also understand where you're thinking priorities might lie, or sort of get a view behind your eyes that maybe are just a completely different perspective than the folks that have been thinking about this so far. So I direct you to the agenda. There were a few sort of high-level questions. Those will be the questions the facilitators will be talking to you about, looking at those sort of ripest opportunities and really thinking about the constraints and the trade-offs and those other things that we'll get into in more detail. So if you haven't been in these breakout room situations, they can be a little jarring. So I'll just give you a little heads up. As soon as I tell Jean to break out, all of a sudden you'll like disappear and pop into some other place with a few people. And then more jarring than that is at the end of the session, you will be abruptly sent back to this main room. So there's a little countdown timer that pops up and tells you you're about to expire in that breakout room. And I don't know, even though I always see that timer, I still find it a little jarring. So just a little heads up. It'll just take a second for the rooms to be dispersed. So Jean, I think we're ready to get into them.
And Deb, I just wanted to say, please give us at least 5 extra minutes from the
Oh,
agenda.
yes, sorry, thank you.
We are running a little late, but this is the critical part. So, you know, we can make some of the other things shorter.
Dan, for sure, and we have time. So yeah, could you bring us back at 6:05, Jean? Thank you very much, Dan.
Okay, will do.
Okay, I'll see y'all in a minute.
Okay, let's see how I did with this. Here you go. Oh, and for our 2 guests, we'll have you stay here in the main room while those folks are away. So if you want to go do something for a little bit and come back and check in on us in a half an hour, you're more than welcome to just turn off your camera and join us at 6:05.
I was going to ask, can I get a coffee break? I think I will take my coffee break.
Yes, this is it. You can have dinner.
No, it's too early for dinner. Do you guys want any coffee delivery?
No, thank you, though.
All right, we'll see you in a little while.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, look, I did that.
Okay. Yeah, good job. Thank you. I was just going to offer for Mike, if he wants to go join another room, that would be fine too.
Yeah. How do I send him to a room? How does that work? What do I do?
If you, Mike, would you like to join a room? Or
Sure.
You want a break?
As long as I'm here.
I don't know how
Okay.
it works.
So I assign him. He can't choose a room, right? I have to assign him.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. Which room should I send you to? Let me send you to Tiffany's room. And then I don't know how it works for you to move around, but
I don't
you need to be a co-host to move around? How's that work?
I don't know. Not sure.
I don't know either. Okay, you're going to Tiffany's room.
Okay.
Adios.
See you.
Nice job, Jean.
All right. Well, you know, thank you for sending that little note, because that's that allowed me to start doing it. And then I sent a message to Francisca to say, like, I'm about to click a button, but can I click this button? And she said, yes, you can set them up. So
I'm so glad she was here. Do you have
that broadcast message to all? Huh?
Do you set a timer, or do we need
I'm just keeping an eye on the time. So we said 6:05, right?
Okay.
6:05. So at 6, I'll send him at 6:55, 5:55, I'll send a message of 10-minute warning.
Okay.
And then I'll do like a little 5-minute or so. Oh yeah. Anyhow, I see now where the button is that says broadcast a message to all, that, you know, that thing that pops up.
Oh, right. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
I think I can't go anywhere. I think I just need to stay here, and I'm afraid to leave. Do you want me to send you anywhere and then you can come back?
Yeah. If I go to a room, I can pop out on my own accord, can I?
Yes. And then I think what it does is then you come back here, and then I can send you to another. So if you want to bounce around, I will stay here. I cannot leave this room. Okay. So do you want to go?
I don't care.
You don't care.
No.
I'm going to send you to Francisca's room.
Okay, great.
Let me just look to see who else. Or should I send? I'm going to send you to Dan's room first.
Okay.
Just see how he's doing.
See how he's doing. I'm sure he's doing great.
There you go. Bye.
Awesome. Bye. Thank you. I don't think we've lost anyone 18. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Hi, all. Welcome. We have a few minutes. Thank you for the couple of groups that let me come in and stalk you. It was just nice hearing the discussions and the diversity comments happening. I'm hoping we can just take a couple of minutes for each group's facilitator just to give us some high points, and if there's a little bit of extra time, we can I can take some more comments, or you all are welcome to put in the chat if you had any sort of big aha moments or anything else you'd like to share beyond what the facilitators share. So I'm going to call on the facilitators, and Tiffany, why don't you give us your report first?
That's what we were laughing about when we got pulled out.
We got elected. So go ahead.
Okay. We had some good clarifications for a bit. A lot of conversations about the challenges at the north end of the loop. We were calling it the point, which is kind of nice, and how although people have lived in the neighborhood and spent a lot of time there, walking all the way to the top was not something they had done before, and it felt like kind of an unnatural thing to do, rather than cutting over on Milliken as a stronger connection to all the other stuff that's happening in the North Loop. We also talked a bit about opportunities, street parking being the elephant in the room of the way that you can get a lot of the things that we have listed in our loop goals. Street parking is likely the one that's going to have to give. And also some talk about, neighborhoods and business community really wanting some bold solutions for the loop. and asking about the possibility of an elevated crossing over Canyon and all of that tricky area in the middle. Anything else, Mike or my group?
No, just a real quick, I think a really quick question was how we gauge success of our solutions and thinking about metrics. They said, you know, the crash data is interesting, but what other metrics can we use? And we shared that there is pedestrian and bicycle comfort kind of metrics that we're going to be using just as we start to test alternatives. So I thought that was good. But yeah, the main one I heard as a wrap up was just be bold. There's lots of support for this project, and it's a good time to do something significant.
Great, thank you. How about Francisca?
Great, thanks so much. So similar themes, big topic of conversation was the crossing at Canyon and talking about how can we make the worst part into the best part. There was also discussion also about an elevated crossing, a pedestrian bridge, but some key opportunity points are really low-hanging fruit, things like at the intersection where cars turn left on Canyon coming up from Watson, you know, can we make that a dedicated left turn, right? Having a dedicated left turn signal there, it's really unsafe for pedestrians crossing over. And then of course, parking, as Tiffany said, the big elephant in the room, parking is a huge issue. How are we going to address that with this project? Is there anything I missed? Anything anyone else wants to add? Great. It was a good conversation.
Oh, great. Thank you so much. Dan.
Hold on. I took a lot of notes. So just to go through very quickly, you know, there was an argument that there's really no reason to have more than 2 lanes on any of these roads. A comment of the fact that the speed of the cars itself makes you very unsafe, feel unsafe as a pedestrian. The concern about, you know, being able to cross Hall and Watson, not only to get to the other side of each of the streets, but to get to the other streets themselves. We talked a lot about the importance of taking into account the impact on business, both in terms of getting their support, assuaging their fears, you know, and also mentioning the construction period itself, which is not insignificant. The opportunity or the real asset of having the covered bicycle parking at Farmers Market really makes it easier for people to park there and walk a little bit, as opposed to just want to park exactly where they're going. There was an opportunity. There is an opportunity. The fact that there are 3 distinct areas that are unique, but there's an opportunity through signage, light poles, having a loop logo, some unifying perhaps art feature and gateways to really have some continuity between the 3 areas. And then an interesting concern about bicycle riding. If you're riding on Hall North, you know, it's not easy to take a left, and you do need to take a left to get over to Watson. And then the last thing is, really, we talked about the concept about not having to necessarily park right where you're going. And the expectation here in Beaverton is really people have always been able to do that, and they look upon that as a negative. Whereas for some of the people in our group, they look at it as a positive, being able to walk a couple leisurely blocks through the downtown area. So they don't mind not having to park right where they're going.
Great. Anything else from Dan's group to share? All right. Oh, Melissa, do you have your hand up?
Well, speaking on that, as far as parking, I always say that as walking. If people would just go like a block over, there's like tons of parking in Beaverton, but people want to park right there by Del Carly, Big's Chicken. You know, if you just go over, the high school has a parking lot right there. Or like what Thornton Coffee, they were saying was that on farmers market days, I'm just surprised at how many businesses put signs in front of their business and I get it if you're gonna, like, you know, have business that day, but it's Saturday and there's nobody parking there. So if you just go off a little bit, maybe 2 blocks, there's tons of parking in Beaverton, you know, you just have to walk a block. So Beaverton High School has a giant parking lot there's never anybody there on the weekends, you know? So, and it's literally a block over, so.
Great, thank you, Melissa. How about one more report? I think Ken is our last one.
Yeah, so we had a really good discussion, and the key points for us, first one was that the disabled community should be considered equal users of the loop, and it shouldn't just be thinking about the corners, it's the entire sidewalk surface too. And I guess if we solve for someone in a wheelchair, we'll solve for a range of other users as well in terms of making them feel safe and comfortable. We also talked about something other groups didn't bring up, but and that is what happens with rideshare, and that includes DoorDash. So when we come out of the pandemic, Uber and Lyft and other services like that will pick back up again. How does that impact the loop for all the new restaurants that are going to be coming up? People will be taking Ubers, or new Door Dashers will be coming to those places, and what sort of space do they occupy? There was a great suggestion to find a unique name, or maybe spread the name The Loop as a district and see that reflected in signage and in the branding and marketing to make people really understand they're in a special place, they're on the loop. And then the last piece I'd bring up that we had a lot of discussion about was, like other groups, the importance of calming the intersections. And there's a wide range of things you can do. Somebody brought up the idea in Japan where they allow people to walk in all directions across the intersection, like a scramble, slowing speeds, having landscaped islands, special lighting to mark those intersections. So that was really important. And we all can't wait to get back at the fountain. So once it's renovated.
Wonderful. Any other points from Ken's group? And I see some good chat items in here too. Any other just general comments, things you wanted to mention but just ran out of time or didn't think about? I think we have just a couple more minutes. There's a lot to, as you all have are sitting with now, there's a lot to contemplate with the short-term parking use, the long-term parking use, the comfort and capacity for lots of pedestrians to use the space and visit businesses and the other community destinations in the area, and then deal with these hulking barriers of crosswalks across the large streets on the railroad, and just sort of figuring out how to juggle all those things. Tom, you have your hand up.
Yeah, just real quick in terms of what comes out of this. I know that things like existing code, be it in jurisdictions, city, state, county, are currently constraints, but I know the city did just do a big downtown design project, and this is in part of it. So some of this is new code, for example. But do you know, is the project prepared to, if there is a solution, an adequate or a prevailing solution that would require some code change, are they identified or prepared to identify that so that the greater community, if it wants to, could support those changes?
Dan,
yeah. Yes, just to answer, that is part of what we're going to do. So we're looking at the physical and the regulatory. We're not going to go through a whole code change or regulatory change, but we're going to identify key aspects that could be worked on.
Sure, especially since if this can be an incremental project.
Exactly.
Make further, anything.
Yeah, no, it's really important.
Great.
Yeah.
Ramesh, I haven't lost track of you. I swear I will give you time in just 1 second. There is a question in the chat about whether or not an overhead pedestrian bike crossing over Canyon is in the realm of possibilities. I wonder if someone from the city, Dan or Jean, if you have any thoughts on that. And then Brett, I see your hand up as well.
Well, I can give an answer, and Jean, please, please add on. So that's a good question. It's something that's often mentioned, and it's something that needs to be addressed in terms of why maybe necessarily it's not the best idea. There are ADA considerations in terms of being able to get up and down from a crossing. They're cost considerations. And yeah, Jean, I don't know if you'd like to add anything else to that.
Sure. Yeah, it's, as Dan said, it's something that's been often mentioned. It's been mentioned even further back in the past during the civic plan and maybe the Creekside plan as well. That's a big investment of infrastructure to build a bridge to go over a 5-lane roadway. We've heard other ideas that it would go even further. Could it go as far as Farmington? There's quite a bit of impact associated with that, and just space that you need to allow that. And I think that the other thing that we've talked about as a team, as we sort of process that as an idea, because we've heard it come up before even tonight, there's a certain, by putting pedestrians and cyclists going over the roadway, there's a certain amount of energy that then takes away from the street itself. And is that something that we want to achieve with this, as opposed to keeping people at the ground plane and creating better crossings at the ground level to connect to the sidewalks, to connect to those businesses nearby? So there's sort of an initial answer, and we'd be happy to chat more in another meeting if there's interest in still talking about that idea. But hopefully that helps answer. I can't remember who asked it. Maybe Paul.
Yes,
Paul wants a yes or a no. Well, I guess in the spirit of this process, I feel like there's more information that we could share with all of you to get your input. At the same time, in my mind, it's a no. I'll just be honest. I don't think it's a good idea for this corridor to put a bridge to go across. I think there's better interventions that we should want to address crossing Canyon at the ground level. That's just my opinion, but we don't have much information to share with you tonight to really get into it. So, does that work for you, Paul?
As an answer.
Yeah, it absolutely does. My question was, is it within the realm of possibility? And there was no answer to that. So then my response was, if you're not sure, then could there be further conversation so that we can come up with a definitive answer, so that a number of us can either put more focus or just drop it. Yeah, that's all.
Okay.
Yeah,
I want to give, sorry, go ahead, Jane. Did you want to add one more thing?
I was going to say we can bring information back, at another meeting when we're at that point of looking at alternatives, if that'll help you all.
Thank you.
Great. I see Brett and Brad have their hands up. I'm also trying to be thoughtful about our guest that's hung with us here, Ramesh, who would like to provide some comments. I'm wondering if maybe Brett and Brad, if you would let me give some time to Ramesh, and then I can come back to you. Okay, thank you very much. Ramesh, you're on.
Oh, thanks. It has been a long way to get a word edgeways.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. No, not a problem. No, there was one thing that I wanted to mention in the context, because if I wait till the end, the context might be lost. While we were discussing all the biking and the walking options, I'm not sure if somebody has thought about these bikes for rent, scooters for rent, where they're going to be, if it's going to be part of this the loop walk thing or so. I thought that was missing in most of the discussion that I heard. And the second thing that I just wanted to bring to the designers' notice is on Canyon Road, just adjacent to the loop on Hall, there's a little triangle of a piece where there used to be an antique store that went away, and that's like an open piece with just some painted triangles on that. It's a very unique and weird situation. I'm sure you guys can come up with some innovative monument or some visiting spot that can be of interest to someone, like a dancing fountain where the kids can play, etc. Just wanted to get those two things into your discussion pot.
Thank you.
I'm just stirring the pot, nothing more.
Thank you.
Very helpful. Thank you. Brett.
Yeah, so I just had one thing. I was looking in the chat that we had from our group, and we had 3 of us all shaking their heads when, when Stephen had said, if we don't resolve the ability to smoothly cross and safely cross Canyon, north to south, vice versa, that there is no loop. And it would become such a big barrier that people aren't willing to cross all 3 of the tracks, Farmington and Canyon, because there's enough good stuff at either end of it. I think that's just our biggest item, is to knock down that barrier. That's first and foremost, in my opinion. So just want to say that. Thank you.
Thanks, Brad. And Brad, and then I see Brandon, you also have your hand up, but Brad.
Yes, thank you. I think there's a lot of opportunities based on that presentation. There's opportunities, galore. My question is how, and maybe you're going to talk about this in the future, how to prioritize those. Like, are we going to prioritize based on the residents of downtown, the businesses that are in downtown, they might care more about parking, or the visitors to downtown, or the commuters that travel through the loop? I'm just curious how some of those priorities are going to be established, if you have that answer.
Well, Brad, that leads really well into the segment of me talking about the next meeting, because the next meeting we're going to talk to you guys about the project vision, objectives, and goals. And that has to do with what are our values. We had the list of the goals of the project. In life, what I found is it's very easy to say, find things that are important. What the hard thing is saying what's the most important among those. So next meeting, we're going to try to work with you guys to better understand that, because what the importance of that is, if you know your values and the ranking of your values somewhat, it makes it easier to evaluate alternatives, right? So what you raised is exactly something that we're looking at, and we're going to need your input specifically on that at the next meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. Brandon.
Thanks. Yeah, going off of that sort of bridge idea, I mean, and keeping the emphasis on safely crossing those 2 major roads, if I don't know, I was just coming to mind sort of, maybe pedestrian crossing arms or something. I mean, I just bringing color lights to those crossing, just something, that's gonna, I guess, be as significant as a bridge, but not a bridge. Something that, prevents people from parking or stopping in the middle of crosswalks and things like that, giving those spaces. So I don't know. I mean, railroads have crossing arms. I don't know why, but, I'm sure there's pedestrian crossing arms too, but that sort of thing. That was my contribution there.
Thank you. I like the creative thinking here. And Michael, I see you have your hand up, and I'll just let everyone know we have about 3 minutes. We only have about another minute's worth of content, so we have a little bit more time to continue the discussion. But go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, sort of keeping on the topic of the safety of crossings and intersections for pedestrians. One thing that sort of came to mind in the opportunities section of the presentation was sort of all the little experiments Portland Bureau of Transportation have been doing on sort of their side of town in terms of adding speed bumps to crosswalks, sort of increasing the angles of turns cars have to take to slow down their travel at intersections and crosswalks. And a lot of those seem like pretty nifty, relatively low cost solutions that we might want to see if we can draw from. I'm not sure if those are sort of in the toolbox of transportation engineering best practices or whatever, if they're more sort of experimental, but having seen those in Portland, they seem like a sort of good tool we might consider.
Great, thank you. Jean.
Thanks, Michael. I was just going to say, Michael, I know what you're talking about. I'm not sure if the rest of the team does, but I know what you're talking about. So thank you. I'll convey. I have a picture in my head.
Any other last minute comments, ideas? A reminder, I will send out I won't, Dan will be sending out the follow-up survey that will give you some ideas or another way to give us some additional ideas or concerns or comments as well.
Can I wrap things up, Deb?
Yes, please do.
Okay, so first of all, thank you very much for your feedback today and your time today. This was extremely helpful, and we are listening. Our next meeting, May 18th, I believe, and the goal of that meeting is to really get into the vision, objectives, and goals for the project towards really having some better idea about how to evaluate design alternatives. We're going to be using the feedback that we got from you guys today towards identifying those design alternatives. Also at the next meeting, we'll hopefully report back to you about some wider community engagement feedback that we've received. And I just wanted to highlight something. We'll send you a separate email about this. We have a community mapping exercise that we're going to be doing from May 1st, likely to May 17th. Francisca, I don't know if you want to explain in 1 minute to people what that might be. And then I have one other thing to say.
Yeah, thank you. So it's actually very similar to the activity that you just did, the picture the loop, except that we're going to have a series of stops along the loop that folks will have the opportunity to fill out an on-the-spot survey via QR code or send pictures in with a hashtag and enter to win a free gift card, just to help get the wider community input for the kinds of things that you have been giving us input for what's working, what's not working with the loop.
And we'll have information on that at the website, and I'll send you out an email as well, so you can tell other people and yourselves. It'll be 4 different places along the loop itself. And lastly, I'd just like to say, continue to ask questions, continue to press if you think something is a good idea or something isn't a good idea. We want your honest feedback. It's our responsibility to listen, and our responsibility if we think that something is not necessarily something that would be the best to move forward with. It's our responsibility to give you the information and to have an open discussion about it. So, please don't be shy about it. But at the same time, also listen to, different perspectives and, people that have different expertises, in different areas. So thank you very much, guys, and enjoy the rest of your evening. We'll see you guys again back soon. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Hey, if the team wants to stay on.
Oh, yeah.
Stay on.
Stay